Thank you. Any questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next witness in favor?
Thank you, Chairman and Committee. My name is Ehren Dorsey, and I support this bill. My story for me starts almost 20 years ago, back in 2004. That's how old my story is. I was 13 years old, and I had a flip phone. This is back when you had to pay per text, you had limited calling. I had a flip phone, and I found a trial for a free chat room on it. And this was while I lived with parents who monitored everything that I did. We didn't have cable, we had limited DVDs that we could watch, we weren't allowed on the internet without adult supervision. They chose what websites we were allowed to go on, and the adult world still managed to creep into our lives through my flip phone almost 20 years ago, without my parents knowing. I have been a part of Harry Potter themed role-playing boards back then that were essentially creative writing message boards for kids. So when I got in the chat room, I asked if anyone wanted to role play with me because I didn't understand that that had sexual connotations. Someone gave me their phone number and asked if we could text, and I said yes. At the time, I didn't know that the person I was starting to talk to, Billy, was fresh out of prison, only 6 months out of prison, for having raped another minor. I didn't find that out until years later. It was within our first few weeks of talking that Billy actually sent me my first porn video. I didn't realize it at the time, but the video that he sent me was extremely graphic on the spectrum of porn videos, and the shock of it made me cry. I had never even seen a man naked before, and this was my first intimate experience with a man through a porn video. I had never even been kissed or even felt a boy hold my hand, and now I had witnessed an hour of brutal sex. When I cried, Billy told me that me crying probably meant that I was a lesbian, because normal straight girls didn't react to porn that way. And so from a very young age, and beginning with this man, I felt like there was something really innately wrong with me and that I was abnormal and damaged. We continued talking for 3 years, and for that entire amount of time, I was not able to successfully date boys my age because of the confusing and unhappy things that I felt about myself from my conversations with this person and what I saw online and how it made me feel. He continued to groom me through porn videos and conversations because we lived too far apart for him to be able to do anything to me in person. Porn was a convenient tool that he used instead. When I was 16 years old and I finally had my driver's license, I decided to drive down to Texas to meet him for the first time. I really believed that he loved me, and I thought that everything would happen on my terms. I drove 13 hours without stopping. I got to Texas at 7 in the morning. He met me in a gas station where I left my truck, and within minutes of us driving back to his house, he began doing things to me in the car. That was when I realized that I was trapped and things were not going to go my way. When we got back to his house, he proceeded to rape me for the entire weekend. He invited a woman over to his house to do things to me, and by the grace of God, and I do believe it was by the grace of God, he let me go home, and I still don't understand why he did. The thing was, though, that I didn't even understand that I had been raped, because everything that he did to me, I had already seen in a porn video for 3 years. The anal, the choking, the violence, the lack of consent, the age difference between us were all parts of the many narratives that I had absorbed for years as a minor through porn. I had no way to navigate and understand the incredibly complex fetishes that I was seeing as a young child in the privacy of my room. I had no way of deciphering between what was appropriate and inappropriate as a concept because I assumed that any sexual video made by an adult and containing adults must be what all adults do. And that made me feel confused about myself, what my natural desires should be from my peers, what I should say yes and no to, and what must be wrong with me that I didn't like the things that I was seeing that all adults must do. What happened to me when I was raped matched seamlessly with the elements that I had seen in porn. I think people assume that the rape must have been truly horrifying for me, and it was, but I was already so numb from the shock and the trauma of everything that I had watched for years in those videos. I think one of the more disturbing things for me also is to realize now as an adult that almost 20 years ago, this man was able to get out of prison. hop on the internet and immediately start grooming someone across the country with porn. No effort was required whatsoever. He could easily access it, and I could easily access it. If my story is from almost 20 years ago, how many other victims of the internet are there? The landscape of the internet has gone unmonitored for far too long. Sorry. The end of my story was a success. I ended up working with the FBI and putting him away in prison, but the damage still stays with me. Porn taught me that age didn't matter for sex. Porn taught me that consent didn't matter. Porn taught me that I didn't matter and that my needs didn't matter, and that was the way to be sexy as a woman, to not respect my own needs. Porn taught me that my first sexual experience as a person didn't need to involve love or being cherished or respected, and that sex always involves exploitation, and that was something normal. I'm 30 years old, and I still don't understand what a loving relationship with a man is. I've never experienced vulnerable sex. I don't know how to be vulnerable with someone sexually. I look back on the last 15 years of my life since Billy was put away, and I feel like I have been more of a porn star in my relationships than a cherished person. The narrative was never explained to me in my formative years. I've been involved in countless abusive situations. I've attempted suicide multiple times in my life. I've suffered from alcoholism and drug addiction, and I've never been in a successful relationship that's lasted longer than 6 months, despite being in therapy my entire life. So in many ways, I feel like that 13-year-old girl still inside, trying to unwind the confusing narrative of who I am and what love is that a 35-year-old man taught me over 18 years ago through his words and through porn. This bill to protect children from pornography already exists. It does not need to be written or created. It was approved and it's active as a statute today. The only issue is that it exists with limited language that did not include the internet. I feel like if it existed back then, they would have, without a doubt, included the internet in it. We're simply asking for it to be updated so that our kids can have a chance at learning about love the right way. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator, I'm going to recognize you for your
Correct. Thank you for your courageous testimony. Thank you so much. Just a short question. What would you say to those who are undoubtedly going to testify against this bill, that it's the parents' responsibility that a multi-billion-dollar technology company, they just can't do it? It's the parents' responsibility. Because as a parent myself, I look at that these corporate behemoths are pointing their finger at me, the parent, and saying it's your fault. You need to do more. Your parents needed to do more. What would you say to those paid lobbyists who said that?
I would say that the people that we have our honest, vulnerable relationships with are our friends, not our parents. Those are who the people we're opening up to and asking to educate ourselves about sex. We turn to our friends, not our parents. We turn to the internet, not our parents, because we're scared and it's an uncomfortable thing. And our friends are not going to recognize what right and wrong is like our parents would. So many times that leaves parents not knowing what's actually going on in their kids' minds and in their kids' hearts. So they're never going to be mind readers and be able to fully control that situation. And if we're turning to our friends and we all have access to the same things and we all don't understand right from wrong in the same ways, it's screwed.
Yes. And it sounded from earlier in your testimony, your parents were doing a lot. They were doing everything they knew to try to keep you away from this hell that you've been through.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so crazy that it's still happening in the exact same ways 20 years later. It's still through the phone.
And 20 years ago this was going on, yeah. Probably much. Like, I don't see how it could be any worse, but it's the bad people are exploiting the technology even more today.
Well, it is worse now because now you have porn where girls are wearing diapers and masturbating through them. So yeah, it is worse.
Okay, thank you again for your testimony. God bless you.
Any other questions for this witness?
Good Good morning, Mr. Chairman, the two of you that are left on the committee. It's amazing. Thank you for staying. My name is Russ Tuttle. I am the founder and president of the Stop Trafficking Project. It is a non-profit, which means there is no profit in what we do. And I am also not here as a paid lobbyist or anything like that. One of the things that we do, our organization, we exist to end domestic minor sex trafficking before it starts by disrupting the exploitation of vulnerability. For the senator that left, her suggestion is amazing. We need to be in schools providing education. That is exactly what we do through our organization, through a strategy we call the Be Alert strategy. We've educated and empowered over 60,000 students about this issue to date in the last few years. Let me share briefly with you just a few of the stories, because what we do is it's amazing when you tell students the truth about this issue. They say thank you for telling us the truth, and their stories are heartbreaking. Just a few of them. A girl in 2nd grade had a Tinder account. That's no longer a dating app, that's a hookup account in one of our rural Missouri schools. There were 17 adult men who wanted her to take her clothes off and send naked pictures. 10-year-old boy recently met a new friend on his gaming system while he was playing. The adult male who was a pervert, a predator, or a pimp. He fit all 3 categories. Once he was arrested, it was discovered that he sent this young boy pictures of an adult female naked. The young boy ran away from home, was gone for 18 hours in Missouri, thinking he was going to meet this person. 5th grade girl recently sent naked pictures to adult men using school-issued MacBook during school hours because they were asking for pictures. Another 6th grade girl was actually engaging in online sex during school hours on a school-issued device, hoping to meet the men on the weekend. I was there on a Wednesday. She came and told her story. 6th grade boy came to me, named Pornhub, who you've heard a little bit about, in 2019. Actually had 42 billion visitors. United States of America far outleads all other nations on the planet in our porn usage. #1 on Pornhub right now. Search is hentai sex, which is a young girl with a very young face and a very exaggerated hourglass body being raped by everything from an airplane propeller to demons and tree trunks. This young 6th grade boy came to me and said, "I'm addicted to pornography. It feels like my brain is on fire. Can you please help me?" Young teenage boy recently found pornography. He came to me and said, "I'm afraid I'm going to start hurting the girls I've known since we were friends since kindergarten. Can you please help me?" 11 girls in grades 11 and 12 came to me. They said, "We feel empowered taking our clothes off, sending naked pictures to adult men." Within 15 minutes, 9 of the 11 were weeping, showing me the cut marks on their arms, talking about how they wish that they could die by suicide because of things that they had encountered online. A middle school girl told me about her friend who had died by suicide 3 days before my school assembly. The young girl had an addiction to pornography that she accidentally stumbled onto, met an adult male who fit the category of pervert, predator, and pimp, and he was using his online life and obscene material to entice this young girl. 6th grade girl recently showed me the choke marks around her neck. You heard Heidi Olson talk about this. Her 8th grade boyfriend had learned that you ejaculate inside a girl at the point you cause her to pass out. And the 6th grade girl hadn't even gone through puberty yet in one of our Missouri schools, and she is showing me the choke marks around her neck. All of these situations, every single one of them, there are so many more stories I could tell you with over 60,000 students that we've invested our lives into. Every single one of them and every single of these situations I'm telling you about today, it all started by these young children at young ages accidentally stumbling onto pornography. And it opened up this gateway for all these nefarious things for them to go through. Sadly, I could go on and on and on. You're the Commerce Committee. You're going to hear from paid lobbyists who say this is a bad idea for a whole bunch of different reasons. Let me just briefly touch on the financial impact of what's happening when we don't do anything. A sexual survivor who is also now a sexual assault nurse examiner. I've given you 7 pages of documented information. Let's take a look at the financial impact of the United States of America. If you add it all up with all the documentation I've provided for you, it's over $1.2 million the cost that is impacting our children by us doing nothing. Simply child maltreatment alone, based on internet usage, $428 billion. A lack of treatment for children exposed to crime, $458 billion a year. Just only the U.S. economic impact of child sexual abuse, $9.3 billion. It goes on and on. Technology facilitated coercive control. Technology facilitated coercive control is something that big tech isn't going to want to talk to you about. They're going to want to talk to you about privacy Let's think about privacy that we need to understand and on our online lives with our banking. We have perverts, predators, and pimps taking privacy, and they're hoping that we will guarantee them anonymity. There's a difference between privacy and anonymity. And it is my complete belief, and I'm here to speak in favor of Senate Bill 923, that moving this will send us in the right direction for our children in the state of Missouri, so that when they accidentally encounter something online, that all the expert testimony you've heard, the dopamine release in the brain, their first time exposure to maybe hentai sex is their first encounter. That's going to teach them healthy sexual relationships. If we can put a simple filter where they have to have access and get parental or adult control before they can access that, it's not going to solve all of our problems, but it's certainly going to take us in a long direction in helping with some of the sexual encounters that our kids are having, and it's all starting online.
Thank you for your testimony. Questions for this witness? So none, thank you. Next up in support.